United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres in Nigeria on a 2-day official visit.
Fire at INEC office in Kaura Namoda. Commission reports no casualty and all critical materials safe.
Colors of ancient Kano culture, how Andusha tickled the fancy of Vice President and thousands of others.
Good Morning Nigeria today takes a look at the increasing cases of measles in Nigeria, plus 2022 Zuma Festival.
As of April 2022, the combined revision report from World Health Organization and UNICEF indicated that there are 21 large and disruptive measles outbreaks around the world in just 12 months. And most of the measles cases were reported in Africa and the East Mediterranean region.
You're right, Kirian. Now, Nigeria is one of the countries named with the largest measles outbreaks since the past year. Now, other countries where there have been outbreaks include Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, and Ethiopia. And there are concerns of the figures being likely higher with valid reasons.
And one of the reasons adduced being that the pandemic disrupted surveillance systems globally for immunization campaigns and demonstrations, and as such come with many more potential underreportage.
Now, as one of the world's most successful health interventions, millions of lives are saved each year through immunization. And this, of course, we must take on as a matter of urgency as there is the upsurge of measles outbreaks. So one can understand the outcry over the communities and immunization programs that they have missed.
Yes, indeed, Kingsley. And the recent warning from World Health Organization and UNICEF says it all. And that an increase in measles cases in January and February 2022 is a worrying sign of a heightened risk for the spread of vaccine-preventable diseases and could trigger larger outbreaks, particularly of measles, affecting millions of children in 2022.
So how does the country respond to the reported worldwide measles cases said to have increased by nearly 80% in just the first 2 months of this year and counting?
Other questions would be, as measles is very contagious, how do we address the immunization gaps in Nigeria as cases tend to show up quickly when vaccination levels decline, as we have witnessed?
Well, Kieran, we will have our guests discuss these issues on the threatening measles statistics and the need for the health system to appropriately respond through vaccination. Now, our second topic today takes our attention to entertainment, and that is the Zuma Festival for this year. It's part of the creative industry, and how exploration of that issue would further illuminate aspects of the festival, Kieran.
Yes, so aptly true there, Kingsley. The organizers have given the 2022 Zuma Festival a theme, Show the Money, hoping to provide residents of Abuja and visitors alike with investment opportunities in the nation's creative economy. So we will find out more on that with the dramatist personnel at the auspicious showtime. It's on that note that I welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kiri and Umayo. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Kirian to also welcome you to the program. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. It's a pretty wet morning today in the nation's lovely capital. Regardless, in the course of our program, we'll serve you our complimentary segments, and this will include newspaper review and business. Right now, here's Dennis Adegunloye, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Dennis.
Yes, good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Kirian, on this very wet Wednesday morning. Good morning, Nigerians. Here is the morning news. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is in Nigeria for a two-day official mission. He arrived the country via Maiduguri International Airport and was received on arrival by Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Umar Zulum. Guterres visited vulnerable and conflict-impacted communities and also laid a wreath at the UN House in commemoration of victims of the 2011 bomb blast.
The Borno I found today is a Borno of hope, is a Borno with future. And I was very impressed to see the policy that is being applied here, recognizing that you don't fight terrorism just by military means, you fight terrorism addressing the root causes of terrorism.
Former Governor of Lagos State and Chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, has expressed absolute confidence in the ability of the governing party to remain strong and united after the forthcoming presidential primaries. Speaking to NTA News after an audience with President Muhammadu Buhari, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu appreciated the Nigerian leader for his perseverance and dogged determination to execute his mandate conscientiously for national unity, stability, and prosperity.
The president has shown a great example of leadership. He's been very, very honest and forthright with Nigerians. Yes, we will continue to be challenged within this short period of time. But it's left for us, the followers, to help, to be ready, to persevere, and give hope to the populace. And yes, we can do it.
The Fourth General Assembly of the Reunion of Episcopal Conference of West Africa has opened in Abuja. The conference is being attended by Catholic bishops from across the sub-region, where Vice President Yemi Osinbajo led a federal government delegation.
All our efforts and our greatest efforts to integrate our community have been thwarted not just by external causes, but and concerns especially around sovereignty of our nations. But they've also resulted in a situation where social conflicts in our nations and around our borders have critically affected our capacity to truly integrate in the way that we wish.
The colorful Hawan Daushe Durbar in Kano remains an earth-shaking cultural fiesta that brings to the fore the depth of cultural might unique to the ancestral civilization of the ancient city. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, who joined thousands of enthusiastic fun seekers in Kano, saluted the cultural value of the Kanawa.
So much fun, so much pageantry. And you know, Kano is always number one. Kano without prosperity, may Allah
Inspector General of Police Usman Al-Khali Baba has enhanced the Nigeria Police Crime and Incident Database Center to provide additional aid to police operatives in acquiring credible electronic information to support investigations. In a statement, the force says the upgrade will facilitate easy identification of suspects, crime location, modus operandi, and global positioning systems to geolocate crimes, among others. Meanwhile, the IGP has mandated the project consultants to fast-track comprehensive training of dedicated police personnel who will man the systems across zonal, state, and divisional headquarters for the collection, management, and uploading of biometric data, case files, investigations, and trial processes to the central database at the force headquarters, Abuja. The Nigerian army has condemned the gruesome murder of 2 soldiers on Saturday, April 30th, 2022, who were heading to Imo State for their traditional marriage, which the army says was carried out by members of the indigenous people of Biafra and its armed affiliate, the Eastern Security Network. A statement by the Director, Army Public Relations Officer, Brigadier General Onyema Nwachukwu, identified the victims as Master Warrant Officer Audu Linus and Private Gloria Matthew. It says the action of members of the proscribed group is unwarranted, especially considering the fact that one of the soldiers, Private Gloria Matthew, hails from Nkwere local government area of Imo State, southeast of Nigeria. The fact that her ethnicity did not prevail on the group portends the deep hate, desperation, and lawlessness with which IPOB and ESN have been unleashing terror on Indigo, whom they claim are on a mission to protect, as well as other innocent Nigerians who are residents or transiting the southeast. A fire incident has been reported at Kauran Damoda local government's office of INEC in Zamfara State. The incident occurred around 11 p.m. on Monday, 2nd of May 2022. No casualty was reported, while critical materials such as permanent voters' cards and registration machines for the ongoing continuous voter registration exercise stored in fireproof cabinets were saved. The statement by INEC National Commissioner for Information, Festus Okoye, however, indicates that the building was extensively damaged and a number of fixed and movable office furniture were destroyed in spite of efforts by the Zamfara State Fire Service and other agencies to contain the inferno. Well, that's the news for now. Good morning. Nigeria continues after this break with Kingsley and Kieran. Have a great day.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. Now let's go business. Financial analyst says a bullish trend experienced in Nigeria's equities market will continue based on favorable corporate actions. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details.
With other markets feeling the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war, investors in Nigeria's equities market have continued to gain principally. This has been evident in the year-to-date returns, which have favorably increased. A professor of capital market, Uche Uwaleke, says domestic investors now dominate the market and he's hopeful this will continue based on prospects available.
We are now looking at a return that is in excess of 15%. And what's interesting about this return is that for the first time this year, this return, with what happened on Friday, has now exceeded the inflation rate. So year-to-date return is now 15.99%, while inflation rate, as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics, is 15.92. So for the first time, we are witnessing a positive real rate of return. And I think, going forward, this trend will continue.
Professor Uwaleke emphasized that the bargain hunting will strengthen the equities market. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Thank you very much, Kunle, for the business package. Up next, newspaper review. But we earlier indicated that it's a very wet morning in Nigeria's capital today. So the physical papers are here to arrive, with the exception of one, which my colleague Kieran has. Kieran, and of course, you have to welcome Bayo first.
Exactly. So let's welcome Bayo Atoyebi, newspaper reviewer. Bayo, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kieran. Good morning, Kingsley.
All right, we're glad you're able to join us.
Yes, I
despite
think it's raining cats, swirling cats and dogs.
Exactly.
Very windy and rainy, and so even the vendors are caught up and the papers are not here.
Exactly, but we happen to have one here. And
that's what we're doing still at this stage. I mean, some viewers might ask, why don't you use the e-copies of the papers if you have
Yes.
them? Now there's been a graduation to that level.
And that's what we have
And that's the
done.
e-papers we will have to
That's
depend
what
on
we've done.
now.
But let's do this physical one first before we get to Bayo, who has the online reports. This Nigeria, that's the newspaper that we have here. On the right-hand side of the name flag, we have 1.6 billion naira debt. Court freezes Madueke, 8 others' accounts. That's on page 7. All right. Without unity, no progress. Wike Masari, PDP presidential hopeful in Katsina. And then the lead story this morning on this Nigeria 2023 general elections. APC must zone president to south. Ondo Governor Akeredolu spits fire. There are 2 riders to that. Ndume, it will be injustice for North to retain power. Rotational presidency is constitutional, says Senator Bamidele. You get the full details on page 2 of this Nigeria. All right, at the bottom of the newspaper, we have Lagos residents demand stiffer measures to check underage access to hotels and alcohol. That's on page 10. All right, bye.
Well, thank you, Kire. Let's start with the latest information, reaction from Mr. President. President Muhammad Buhari has said the Nigerian media has to be mindful of sponsored political news and publications capable of inciting hatred, division and violence, and chaos, especially with the general election in sight. In the message to the occasion of the World Press Freedom Day, President Muhammad Buhari charged the press to reflect on the need to embrace the best professional standards and also practices in the build-up to the general elections, while saluting the few ones who have the courage among them to go the extra mile at personal risk to keep the society informed. He says we must as a profession stay united in support of media professionals who work hard to de-escalate violence, conflict, and promote peaceful society without compromising their responsibilities of reporting. He urged government information managers also to ensure that the press and the public get facts and figures of government activities without any tears. He assured that federal government will continue to be committed to the principles of press freedom. Governor Nasir El-Rufai says that gunmen terrorizing the people of Kaduna State are being assisted by scores of informants in many communities across the state. The governor indicated so while receiving Emir of Zaza, who came to pay Salah homage, or otherwise known as Hawan Bariki in Zaria. He called on traditional rulers across the state to mobilize residents to support the armed forces by exposing the terrorists and their informants as a means of giving local intelligence to the security. He recalled the outcome of the collaboration that he had with the governors of Northwest and Niger State and said from the operations that was carried out through the Kamuru and Kuyambana forest, the activities of the criminals were decimated considerably, but regrettably, it was not followed up, and the terrorism in Niger, Kaduna, Katsina, and Zamfara State has gone on the increase. The Kaduna State governor still emphasized that 7 years after, he still remained convinced that if the comprehensive action were continued and sustained there was no way the terrorists could have gained the upper hand. Meanwhile, he has called on the traditional rulers to urge the farmers to gear up for farming and also participate actively in the 2023 general election. He reiterated that his government is determined to complete the urban renewal programs is commenced in Kaduna State. The Army headquarters has announced, regrettably, that Warrant Officer Audu Linus and his wife, Private Gloria Matthew, are the 2 officers that were murdered by the elements of indigenous people of Biafra and its security outfit, Eastern Security Network. The Army spokesman, Brigadier General Nwachukwu, has vowed that the killers of the couple who beheaded them on Saturday would be hunted down and tracked down. He said the soldiers were on a trip to fulfill a traditional rite of matrimonial responsibility. He said the army says that the gruesome murder depicts the callousness of the terrorists who perpetrated violence and claim and masquerade that they are protecting the interests of the people. He said the army will ensure that those who unleashed murder on its personnel do not go unpunished. And some service chiefs have also warned and raised the alarm that they have vowed that the worst is ahead for bandits, terrorists, and criminals. Speaking at separate fora, the chief of army staff and the chief of air staff made very stern pronouncements about the activities and the operations ongoing. The chief of army staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, spoke on the forward operation base to curtail criminality in the northwest, while the chief of air staff, Air Marshal Isiaka Amao, in a message to operation in the north central zone, urged them not to leave any stone unturned to ensure that they eliminate the terrorists who are terrorizing citizens and undermining peace in the north central and other parts of the country. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is on a 2-day visit to Nigeria. He is in Borno State, where he has visited IDP camps and construction to rehabilitate persons displaced from the vagaries of the insurgency. The Secretary General...
I'm sorry, we had that story in our bulletin,
yes.
This last one you were reading. There are a number of, if you like, running copies that yes. We can immediately discuss before we wrap up this segment and get into our conversation segment. One you have also raised again is the gruesome murder of 2 service personnel. They were soldiers who were going home for their traditional marriage ceremonies. The lady was raped in the presence of her fiancé, and then the 2 of them were beheaded. I do not fathom how we have descended to this level of bestiality.
Bestiality, yes.
Where we have little regard for human life. And to worsen matters, the incidents were said to have been videoed, and the video circulated. I have not seen the video, but I have read accounts that the video was circulated, and I don't have the stomach, of course, to watch such videos. The military authorities, that's to say the army, have responded appropriately to say that they are investigating the matter. There are usually footprints of video, so you can trace. There are scientific methods, for tracing the source of that particular video, and of course, ultimately apprehending the persons and then bringing them to justice. What should be avoided is to assume that everyone who was in that community where the incident occurred was most likely an accomplice. The perpetrators may have come from afar to come and carry out that atrocity. And usually, from what we have seen in the past, you have some brutal reaction to those communities. But the perpetrators of this particular incident, no matter how long it takes, the authorities should track them down and bring them to justice swiftly.
Another concern is the story Kirian read about underage boys and girls.
Having access to hotels.
Hotels and other criminality. That is something that has to be checked. Here in Abuja, there are underage boys who are riding motorcycle and conveying passengers. By traffic rule, if you are under 18, you are not supposed to be on the highway.
Precisely. You won't even have a license.
Well, do they have all those operators of what you now know as Okada? Do they have licenses?
They are not registered. Motorcycles are not registered. They don't even know what is highway rule. They drive on the blind side of the driver all the time. So much so that if you are going on the highway, unless you are very careful, both left and right, you are likely to run into them. And the moment any incident happens, you see them, they will gather like a swarm, and it is always an occasion for riot.
They won't even ask any question. The moment you knock down any of their members, you are just in trouble. Just find a way to escape the area. Otherwise, you may find yourself lynched.
Well, the law has to be upheld. And namely, if you do not have a license, then you don't drive a vehicle or you don't ride a vehicle, whether a 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler, four-wheeler or more. This is part of the lingering lawlessness that we find all around. You need to have a license before you ride a motorcycle. These motorcycles have no number plates. They have no plate numbers, nothing. They use them for criminal activities. The riders are recklessly careless. Just because you have unemployment amongst this group is no justification for them not to have the rules. We have discussed this matter previously on Good Morning Nigeria, and the national president of Okada Riders Association was our guest on this program. But still, the lawlessness amongst these persons persists, and I think that's unfair. Yesterday, you recall we talked about the Youth Corps member who was declared missing for some time, and then later her dismembered body was found somewhere in the Federal Capital Territory. There's an update that the husband of that Youth Corps member and one or two other persons were arrested last Saturday. To help in the investigation, because according to the police report, the husband was said to have been one of the 2 or 3 last persons to have called the Youth Corps member before she went missing. But Bayo, you raised that curious fact yesterday, namely, the Youth Corps member was with a child.
Yes.
And the child apparently is safe. So what happened at that time? How was the corps member snatched from the child, or how was the child snatched from the corps member? Well, the child wasn't snatched. If the child is safe, then the child wasn't snatched. So it would be the corps member who was snatched.
Exactly. And what I'm even thinking about now is the arrest of her husband. Should he actually be arrested? I thought that he may have perhaps been interrogated as to what transpired during his last call to his wife. Because under normal circumstances, a man monitors, perhaps will be talking with his wife, if his wife perhaps, went out or is not back yet and all of that. So that's a natural aspect of, normal conversation between spouses, I'm just wondering why he was arrested anyway.
Well, the police must have had their detailed investigation and must have had their leads before they committed themselves to those arrests. But the information has it that she left home for community development. Every Wednesday they have their community service. So she left home with the child. But after she went missing, they found the child, but the woman was not found. At what point was the woman separated from the child?
Exactly.
Precisely.
Who did the separation, and how was the child recovered without the mother?
Where was he recovered?
Yes. So those are the leads that probably the police are following and are apparently questioning those who were last in contact with her, maybe through her phone.
Yeah, and then another running story at this time for those who insisted on justice. This is sad news and even bad news from Benue State. You remember the 13-year-old girl,
Yes.
Ochanya Ogbanje, who was said to have been serially raped by her uncle and the son of the uncle, that's to say now her cousin, that's to say father and son. The father is a lecturer at the Benue State Polytechnic, serially raped the girl until she took ill and then died. The matter generated quite some uproar. We discussed it here on Good Morning Nigeria, if you remember. The trial took place at the Benue State High Court. And Victor, who is the son, has been on the run, has not been found, so he's at large. But the father, who is the lecturer, and who was alleged to have participated in the serial rape of Ochanja, was discharged and acquitted last Thursday.
Yes, he was discharged and acquitted, but sadly, they are now holding the son and looking for him for the charges of rape.
And that was at the Benue State High Court.
Yes.
There was another case that was preferred against the wife of the lecturer for negligence. This case was prosecuted by NAPTIP at the Federal High Court, also in Benue State, that's to say in Makurdi, and the wife was convicted for negligence in the management of the affairs and the control of the 13-year-old child. I think that this decision is one that will generate quite some debate in legal circles, considering the ratio by His Lordship. The Lordship said, well, there was an autopsy report from the Federal Medical Center in Makurdi, which said that the 13-year-old girl, Ochanja, died of natural causes. And then the police forensic lab said that the young girl died following a series of sexual assaults. There was also an autopsy report, as I mentioned, and then his lordship said that he could not pick and choose which of the autopsy reports to rely on, and that there was no match of the specimen of the defendant, or what you used to call an accused, and what the police. And as I said, this is going to generate quite some debate in legal circles.
Yes, really. Well, I don't blame the judge, because of course you know that it's based on the evidence before him that he will, make judgments.
And he has to take his decision based on beyond all reasonable doubt.
And when information came about the rape of the young girl, nobody knows the source of that information as to how authentic that information really was, before taking up the man himself as a lecturer, and his son. All right, before we go, there are some newspaper reports that we have, but that's major stories. As we have on this one today, APC must zone presidential to South. Some other papers did carry the same as lead story. Akeredolu to Buhari, it's Southerners' turn to produce next president. That's on this day. And the Nation says, let's end zoning suspense. He says, Akeredolu tells APC leaders, let's end zoning suspense. Okay. And the Punch says, dumping rotational presidency will cause crisis, according to Akeredolu. I just wonder why all the papers, most of the papers carried it as a headline.
Governor Rotimi Akeredolu is the chairman of the governor of the Southern Governors Forum. And you will recall that the Southern governors had met on 2 occasions, first in Delta and second in Lagos, and had asked specifically that the 2023 presidency be zoned to the South. So in pursuance to that, it's now happened on his own political party that all Progressive Congress must abide by that principle of zoning, that it is now the turn for Southern Nigeria, and for purposes of equity and peace and peaceful coexistence, the party must zone it to the South. In fact, he is very emphatic. However, you recall that the chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Senator Abdullahi Adamu, said categorically that the party has not taken a decision on whether it is zoning it to the North or to the South. But the National Working Committee, the party executive who are working on behalf of the National Working Committee, has that as its assignment. And before the primaries, a decision will have to be announced.
Okay, Bayo, deep appreciation for being around this morning.
Thank you.
We'll see you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We take a short break now. When we return, it will be our conversation segment.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're glad to have you with us up to this moment. Now, as a prompt for our first conversation, which is looking at the increasing cases of measles in Nigeria, here is Garba Natala with the background report.
No one has heard about measles outbreak for a long time, until recently a report released by UNICEF and World Health Organization announcing an imminent risk of an outbreak worldwide. The report indicated that measles cases have increased by 79% in the first 2 months of 2022. When compared to the same period in 2021, the World Health Organization warned there is high tendency that the increasing rate of infection among children in January and February 2022 shows the sign it has become a concern worldwide. The heightened risk for the spread of vaccine-preventable diseases possibly can trigger bigger outbreaks, particularly measles, in 2022. According to the UNICEF and World Health Organization report, 23 million children missed out basic childhood routine vaccines, the highest number since 2009, and in 2019, 3.7 million children missed out. Worst scenario of recorded cases of measles outbreak in the past year include Somalia, Yemen, Nigeria, Afghanistan, followed by Ethiopia. The report also indicated that insufficient measles vaccine coverage was the major reason for the outbreaks, wherever they occur. In the same vein, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted the introduction of the second dose of measles vaccine in many countries. As Nigeria, among other countries, work to respond to such outbreaks, will preventable vaccines cover UNICEF and World Health Organization's lost grounds to support immunization systems? What more could community leaders and health workers do to create awareness on the need for immunization? And can the impact of these disruptions to immunization services be tackled as a matter of urgency to protect the children against measles and other diseases? These and more issues will be discussed by guests on the program.
Thank you very much, Garba Natala, for that background. With us in the studios to discuss issues around the spike in the cases of measles in Nigeria. Let's welcome UNICEF Nigeria Chief of Health, Dr. Eduardo Salades. Dr. Salades, delighted to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Also with us on the program is Dr. Patrick Ezie. It's Head of Clinical Services at St. Vincent Hospital here in Abuja. He's also a past president of the Rotary Club of Abuja Federal. That's how the Rotary Club is designated, Abuja Federal. Dr. Ezie, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, gentlemen, you're welcome to the program. Right. Of course, during our introductory aspect, we did recognize the fact that the two major world bodies, the WHO and UNICEF, had a report on the current measles outbreak situation globally. And we would like to know, as a background, to this conversation, how worrisome, is this outbreak, and how does it affect Africa as a continent, of course, particularly Nigeria. Let me begin with the Chief of Health, UNICEF.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this question. So at this moment, Nigeria is facing one of the major outbreaks of measles in the world, as we saw in the report. There are 5 countries with a lot of cases. In the case of Nigeria, is more than almost 15,000 cases of measles that they are spanned in almost all states. At this moment, more than 600 LGAs have been affected, and we have more than 180 outbreaks ongoing. As well, in the last 12 months, more than 50 children have died. And it's important to say that this is measles is preventable. It's a preventable disease and we can prevent it with vaccines. So what Nigeria has in common with the other countries that we saw in that list, with Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan? So what we have in common is that we have some areas with low vaccination coverages. So what we are seeing that most of the measles cases that we are seeing here in Nigeria have been in states with low coverage of vaccination. So to me, that's one of the issues that we need to be tackling and addressing, is to increase coverage of vaccination to be really able to stop this outbreak.
Thank you. Well, other than low vaccination coverage, I recall that in the past there had been a great deal of applause for the vaccination drive by the Primary Healthcare Development Agency. So how then does one explain this sudden rise in the numbers of measles infections?
So I think there are 2 factors. I think the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency is doing a great job, and we are their partners, jointly with WHO and Gavi and others, as well as the Federal Ministry of Health. And vaccination has been improving across the country. But the main issue that we are challenging at this moment is inequalities on vaccination. We are seeing that in states like Sokoto, still only 1 out of 10 children are vaccinated. In other states, it's much higher. So the most difficult thing is no leaving no one behind, to reach the children at hard-to-reach areas. And this is what we are trying to do. And NPHCDA is planning, and with the support of UNICEF and WHO, Gavi and others, we are planning a national campaign for measles on 20 states starting in June, to really try to address the low coverage and to increase vaccination coverage, especially for measles. So inequities is one of the big challenges that we are facing at this moment.
Okay, Rotary in particular, well, the Rotary Club, has been identified as a major stakeholder when it comes to the issue of vaccination and ensuring that the entire nation is covered. And as my colleague did mention earlier on, there was this applause, that we have very good coverage, almost 100%, coverage in terms of vaccination. Could you just give us an idea of what you think, that happened that led to the low level of vaccination, which precipitated the outbreak of measles in Nigeria this time around?
Well, thank you very much. Rotary International is a very pro-vaccine organization, um, evident by the work we've done so far with polio, because we realize that, especially in low-income countries and developing countries like Nigeria, there is a problem of accessibility to vaccines. And the accessibility to vaccines is also compounded by so many other issues, cold chain factors, training of health workers, ensuring that the vaccine gets to those who need it the most. And I think that's why we have Gavi pushing the zero vaccinated children agenda, because there's still a large proportion of underserved population that need vaccines that are not getting it. So what did Rotary do with polio? We focused on polio for a long time, and then after some time we said no. We've made a lot of successes with polio. It's almost 99% eradicated. It's only present in 1 or 2 countries. And recently Nigeria got its certificate of being polio free. So we began to understand that making these vaccines available at the doorstep of people is the way to go. And that's why Rotary has invested billions to ensure that a lot of people underserved population get the vaccines that they require. Now, with measles, measles vaccine is on the current immunization schedule. It comes as MMR. But what we see on the ground is that in the facilities is that there's still this phenomenon of skipping. Some mothers feel that once we've taken vaccines, this child has, and then they skip the 9 months vaccine. So you now see that they may be coming for other immunizations, but maybe feel that we're tired. There's fatigue, vaccination fatigue. And that's one other thing Rotary International is trying to do, to provide information about vaccinations, to ensure that young people, families understand that vaccine-preventable diseases can be prevented if you take the vaccines. So all these are the issues, the information being out there that citizens should continue to ensure that they complete these vaccinations, because the truth is that vaccines, people may have a wrong idea that once you're vaccinated, you won't get the illness and all that. But in truth, vaccine enables you not to have severe forms of the illness. So you could have a typical measles, but it will not be as serious as when you have the typical measles that is highly contagious and all that. So we'll try to provide the information, ensure that individuals get vaccinated, and then try and provide the access. So we're looking at working hand in hand with Gavi and UNICEF and the federal government to see how we can also push vaccination for measles. Also, there's a lot we're also doing in the area of community sensitization. Most Rotary clubs are in communities, they serve communities. So they also try to provide vitamin A, even though that is treatment. But it's also part of the things we do during our Rotary Health Days. We try to make sure that even if they can't get the vaccination, they can get supplementation of vitamin A when the need arises. So these are the things we've been trying to do. And we think that from our own intervention, these are the issues that we have come to see.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Izzy. Dr. Celades, let's back up a bit. What is measles and what are its symptoms?
Okay, measles, it's a contagious disease that affects normally children. It's a disease that if the children are well nourished, normally is not severe and doesn't result on death. However, when this happens to malnourished children, this can result in severe complications, including death. It's a disease that causes fever, that causes itching, and as well red spots. It's a disease that has been with human beings forever. And 40 years ago, more or less, the vaccine was discovered. And since then, mortality for measles has decreased substantially across the world. So we know the vaccines for measles work. We know that it's a preventable disease. We know that if the children are not malnourished, it's not going to be severe. We know that vitamin A works as well. But however, we know that if a children is living in poor conditions, with poor nutrition, with poor hygiene, etc., can be mortal, can be really a very severe disease. So we have the tools to prevent it. And the main issue, as my colleague from Rotary was saying, is access to the vaccines, how we can really ensure that families have access. What we are seeing now is that we need to work at community level and to work with religious leaders, traditional leaders, etc., to get this drive, so families can access to the vaccines. As well, sometimes families live in hard-to-reach areas. So that's why we are working with NPHCDA and other partners and Rotary to really do outreach campaigns and vaccination campaigns. As well, we are seeing in other parts of the world, we are seeing vaccine hesitance and anti-vax movements. This is starting now because of COVID and other vaccines that they are around. And people are scared, maybe saying, what's happening here? But I have to say, measles vaccine has been with us 40 years now, and it's completely safe. More than 1 billion people have been vaccinated, not only for measles, but for all the vaccines in the last 20 years. Vaccines are saving more than 2 million people, 2 million children every year. So I think it's important to say to people, to communities, to the moms, to the parents, that vaccines is about when you love your children, when you respect your community, when you want to show gratitude to the health workers, to the nurses, midwives, doctors, just vaccinate your children. Most of us, we believe in vaccines, right? But still, we are shy. We don't tell to people that we vaccinate our children. So maybe this is something that these days, that it's so much noise, we need to do more.
I'm just wondering, Kieran,
how asking whether is it only the children that are attacked by this disease, or can an adult also get measles?
It can happen, but it's normally a child disease. Normally it happens before you are 11, 12 years old, when you are children, like others, right? Like mumps, varicella, and other diseases. But it can happen, but it will be more unusual and unlikely will result on death.
I was going to ask this, the vaccination campaigns that we've heard about in recent years have tended to suggest that vaccinations are co-administered. In other words, once a child is born, you get the polio, you get tetanus, and then you get measles. The so-called 6 childhood killer diseases. They're supposed to be co-administered. So what is happening now that the measles vaccine appears to be missing, and then you're having this increased rate of infections and even fatalities. And as I said, 600 local government areas across the country. That's enormous. Dr. Ezie.
Okay, well, the current epidemic proportions of measles can be attributed to so many factors. But usually, if a good investigation is done, you may find out that usually when you don't have a herd population of immunized individuals. In fact, for measles, if you have 5% of the population being immunized against measles, it's enough to buffer the population to prevent epidemic spread. So if you are not at that level, these are the things that can result. Also, when you have large numbers of unimmunized individuals coming down with measles, they now spread the illness even further. So these are some of the things that can trigger this kind of spread. But when it comes to immunization, especially with measles, you mentioned that vaccines are timed for a particular reason. With measles, usually in the first 9 months, if the mother is breastfeeding, the antibodies are transmitted. So we don't expect babies at that age within the 9 months period to suffer from measles because there's some antibody. But they lose that ability between 9 to 12 months. and then can suffer measles. And that's when we give the measles vaccine. So that's why for measles, it's especially timed at that point, to ensure that there's some coverage. But however, when you don't have enough of the babies getting, the children getting the vaccines, then you now have this kind of a seminal outbreak, and we need to do more. Like what Rotary does is we focus on the situations and try to provide immediate solution. Like we focused on polio. If measles is now the problem, the Rotary International Board may look at it and say, okay, let us see what we can do. With polio, Rotarians on the polio vaccination days and even on the booster days, we actually accompany the health workers door by door to ensure we provide that supervisory supervisory role to ensure that not only are these vaccines provided to the people who need it, but they are also given properly. So these are the things that maybe working with UNICEF eventually we will come to see how we can ensure that people get the best of vaccinations in the country.
Gentlemen, ranking Nigeria among other nations that have been bedeviled by this infection, Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, these are war-torn areas. The areas where, it is particularly difficult to get around, especially in the hinterland. But Nigeria is totally different, right? So now that it has occurred, what should be the right steps to take if you're asked to advise, the Primary Healthcare Development Agency and any other organization or agency in Nigeria who should be responsible for this? What should be the first step to take? Because already it is with us at the moment, over 600 council areas in Nigeria out of 740. So it's really huge. So what should be the right step to take?
Okay, thank you for that question. As we're saying at the beginning, inequities is a big issue, right? The first vaccine that you get is BCG, one of the first ones in the south east. There is a coverage of 90%, 9 out of 10 children they have it. But when you go to the northwest, it's almost 60% only. On average, the coverage of Penta 3, this is a pentavalent vaccine at the country, is 56%, almost 57%. Like 5 years ago was less than 50. So the country is progressing, but it's not enough really. So we need to progress at a much faster rate. So what we believe is the main step or the main action needed is to strengthen primary health care, right? And few weeks ago, if you remember, we have the PHC summit that MPHCDA was hosting to see how we can reimagine and transform primary health care with this policy of one primary healthcare center per ward. So I think that's the key. What means strengthening the primary healthcare system? Means having an adequate health workforce, having nurses, having doctors, having midwives. Means as well having adequate financing. We need primary healthcare centers, they need to have enough resources to be able to deliver the services. As well, it means having a strong supply chain, so the drugs and the vaccines can arrive to every ward and to every primary healthcare center. As well, it means to having good data. We need to be more granular in the data. Sometimes we are looking to the data only at the state level, but we need to be able to look to where are the outbreaks, not even at LGA level, but even to go to world level, and to make decisions based on that data. So we are fully committed to this agenda that MPHCDA and the Federal Ministry of Health are leading on reimagining and transforming primary health care in the country. And we really believe that if we do that, if we strengthen especially the health workforce, we really can have an impact and increase the vaccination coverages.
All right, thank you. Earlier, Salades, you spoke about vaccine hesitancy as likely a causative factor in the rise of measles cases in the country. How acute is this problem, Dr. Izia?
Well, vaccine hesitancy is a serious problem. It's a serious problem because it's not, if you look at the general population of the country, you would think that vaccine hesitancy will be something you will see amongst the low income or the uneducated portion of the country. But it will surprise you that there are professors, doctors, healthcare practitioners that still are vaccine hesitant, vaccine skeptic. And this creates a problem because if you are hesitant about vaccinations, then you can't properly advise the population about the vaccines, the benefits, and it's one of the problems we see on ground, especially during the vaccine campaigns. By the time you go from house to house and you're asking, are there kids in this house that require vaccines, and then you have parents hiding their children because they don't want them to be part of it and all that, without understanding that one unvaccinated child is enough to start an epidemic, just one. Because that child will play with others, will go to school, will interact with kids of his age, and that can be a fuel for epidemic illnesses. So as far as vaccine hesitancy goes, that's why Rotary also works very closely with community leaders. We work very closely with opinion holders in the community, because we've come to see that you can't really achieve much if you don't have such individuals on the same page with you, because they are the ones that will help influence some of these households where there seem to be vaccine resistance or hesitancy. Again, also, I think we need to do more in terms of educating the populace, maybe hold more town hall meetings, do more adverts on television or radio, to also encourage people to take advantage of the vaccines. Most times you don't even pay for them, so that's even where it is even quite sad, because if you understand that sometimes the end complications of measles can be very dire. You can have brain-related issues. You can have pneumonia that can result as a result of complicated measles. And then sometimes even in severe forms, a lot of children have died as a result of measles infection. So it's actually quite serious. And it's also interesting to know that measles is even one of the most infectious communicable diseases around. Yes, its R factor is actually quite high. It's even high above the over COVID, if you want to look at it. So it's a very highly infectious illness, So, but what happens is that we are not bearing the brunt because of the immunization efforts we've had over the years. But that's waning now, and that's why you're seeing this evolution of measles infection and spread.
You said that is normal. What happened to Rotary? Did you at any point in time, stop what you've been doing? Because you've just said one thing that's very pertinent here, that is highly contagious.
Yes.
All right, and it can be dire in terms of affecting different parts of the body of a child. Right. Yeah. So let us know what Rotary has in store right now. Of course, we have applauded you for all the efforts you've made in the past, and this time around we are having a very deadly, disease around the corner. And for the fact that it's a disease that is, it could be said to be synonymous with children, then it's very dangerous. So, what is the next line of action on the part of Rotary?
Well, yes. So, Rotary International does its humanitarian work in so many ways. Usually, we identify the problem, and once we identify the problem, we now start looking for interventions and how to go about it. With the success we've had with polio and the structures we have supported with polio eradication, a lot of it is actually what is fed off to support other illnesses. I'll give you an example. We support the cold chain system. We support healthcare workers who are involved in vaccination. We support contact tracing. And then we support supervision. I'm sure UNICEF also does a lot of that as well. But I think we can beat our chest and say we also support this to a large extent. And some of the benefits of this have been employed in other illnesses like COVID and even measles. So for instance, I'll give you an example. In Pakistan, the cold chain system there is heavily funded by Rotary. And when there were measles outbreak there, it piggybacked. We used the system there to store the vaccines for measles, ensure that the communities got them, still use the same health workers we trained for polio vaccination to support that grassroots engagement to ensure that, because the truth is these days, communities trust polio. Once they see that yellow vest and they see Rotarians, they know what we come for. We don't need to introduce ourselves anymore because we have made a statement in that regard that when you see us, we're vaccinated, we come for vaccines and all that. So currently Rotary clubs everywhere in the country, worldwide over 35,000 clubs, and in this district we're over 100 clubs. So I'm here because we are taking this measles outbreak seriously, and I'm sure the boards of the clubs are warming up to engage with other stakeholders, partners, to ensure that we put our foot down and ensure that the Nigerian people get the best that they can get out of this vaccination process.
Okay, Dr. Salades, tell us something. Is there a disruption of the cold chain system in the logistics for the administration of vaccines? I want to have better information on that, because as part of the national response to the coronavirus, one of the areas where the presidential committee, and invariably the Ministry of Health and the primary healthcare agency had to work on was a cold chain logistics system for delivering vaccines. You remember there was one vaccine that was said to be only potent if it was stored at some extreme cold temperature. And of course, Nigeria didn't become a candidate for that. So tell us, is there a disruption of the cold chain supply or delivery of vaccines that may have accounted for this? And if so, why the disruption?
Okay. So just to give a little bit the picture of the vaccines, because UNICEF is the leading agency of the UN helping with vaccines, we are bringing to the country more than 300 million of vaccines per year. And they are coming in more than 200 shipments per year. So every other day, Nigeria is receiving a shipment of vaccines. This is because actually the cold chain is not disrupted, but has low capacity, right? So there is not capacity to store massively new vaccines arriving. At this moment, we have 14 antigens for different vaccines, plus 4 antigens of COVID. So they have normally 3 temperatures that you need to be working: ultra cold, cold, and normal. So it's quite complex. But people say that crises are opportunities. So what we have been doing over the last couple of years, with COVID-19, a lot of resources have been allocated to Nigeria and to other countries in terms of financial resources, but as well human resources, technical resources. And we have been using that to strengthen the cold chain. So, for example, only in the last 10 weeks, we have multiplied by 10 the capacity of the National Strategic Cold Store to store vaccines at cold temperature by doing some walk-in cold rooms, big ones like containers. As well, in the last 18 months, the cold chain capacity of the country has been duplicated because all this influx of resources have been used. They came for COVID, and as well we have been getting these ultra cold refrigerators and freezers. But still, we have been using these for the vaccines. Most of the antigens, they need the same temperature. You use the same temperature for measles than for polio, for example, vaccine. So we have been working quite a lot on this. So to get my answer short, at this moment, there is not a disruption. However, still more work is needed to strengthen even further the cold chain. We can still have more cold chain capacity. We need that. Receiving every 2 days 1 shipment of vaccines is not good. Ideally, we need to receive 1 shipment every 3 months, and to store that with big capacity, maybe not only in Abuja, but as well in other states with international airports, etc. So we are moving in that direction. We are going to continue strengthening the cold chain. And this is one of the key issues that we as UNICEF, we are working. The other one as well is the community part, the same than Rotary. We have more than 14,000 community mobilizers, most of them women, that they have been working in polio. And the country achieved that success of eradicating polio 2 years ago. And we need to continue building on these successes to be able as well to eradicate other diseases and to really ensure that we are leaving no one behind.
All right, Dr. Isia, how do we increase capacity to be able to, ramp up activities, towards ensuring that children are vaccinated? You have mentioned the fact that it's highly contagious, and we also like to know whether there are measures that should be taken by parents or caregivers as a kind of a basic intervention mechanism, to protect other children from being affected by this.
Okay, well, with regards to capacity building, I would like to first of all to applaud the management of NTA for bringing this to the forefront, because without this kind of discussions, a lot of people can't understand how serious the issues are and what organizations are struggling to do, because we need to get to the point where the average Nigerian becomes more health-seeking in behavior, because it affects the healthcare status of the country. What do I mean by that? A lot of support comes from international organizations for this kind of measures. And you now ask, the part we're supposed to play is just to present and collect the vaccines. That should be the easy part, but there's still a lot of struggle with convincing people to take it, with ensuring that healthcare workers give these vaccines, ensuring that the vaccines are kept properly, and all that. And that is actually the lesser part of the issue. So what
while you're saying this, my colleague and I, through this program, always also focus on the role of subnational entities. I heard you say that coaching in Abuja and perhaps elsewhere where you have airports. In seeking to deepen your foray of vaccination efforts into the hinterland, how much support do you get from the subnational entities? That's to say the state governments and then the local governments themselves.
Well, so that's actually the point I was going to arrive at. We have a very well-structured National Primary Healthcare Agency. It's improving in capacity every other day. From its response to polio, to COVID, they've learned a lot. And that organization, it's the center of the hub for a lot of the other organizations, because it's the gateway to the people. So a lot needs to be done to further strengthen the National Primary Healthcare Agency, and also strengthen, by extension, the state primary healthcare agencies. Because if that chain works very well, you will have more closer access to the community members. You'll be able to engage further hinterland, and each time the people see that government presence, because the primary healthcare agency remains the singular government presence, or the closest government presence that the community individual living in the rural areas trusts, because they are the ones that can go into the hinterlands, work with the primary healthcare centers, ensure that the individuals and the citizens there get this benefit of healthcare that the entire country is trying to get for them. So enough capacity needs to be built on that agency to furthermore galvanize the resources of the government to do that. Then also, training of health workers is also very key, because both private and government sectors, you have health workers that need to be trained and to implement these vaccine initiatives. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. We just hope that the government and other stakeholders will ramp up activities to ensure that this particular very highly contagious disease does not spread in Nigeria. At this point, we'd like to appreciate both of you for being here this morning. The UNICEF Nigeria Chief of Health, Dr. Eduardo Saladis, we thank you for being here this morning. And Rotarian Patrick Ezie, Rotary Club of Abuja, Federal Abuja. We'd also like to thank you. Also,
Pleasure to
you're also a
me.
medical practitioner,
Yes, I
medical
am.
doctor. We appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
All right, it's here that we take a short break. And when we return, we shall be focusing attention on the second topic for conversation, which is the 2022 Zuma Festival. Do stay with us.
You're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network. Better Zuma Film Festival, laced with investment opportunities in the nation's creative economy, is the promise from the organizers of the festival this year. So it's showtime, and let's talk business. Kirian with Showbiz.
All right, let's now welcome to the program our guests this morning for this particular topic. And first, let me introduce Dr. Chidia Maduekwe. He's the Managing Director, Chief Executive, Nigerian Film Corporation, and Chairman, Zuma Film Festival Central Planning Committee. Good morning, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right, we also have here in the studio with us Mr. Terence Komalo, Monitoring and Evaluation Manager, National Film and Video Foundation, South Africa. We're glad to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
All right. Also on the program this morning is international filmmaker, director, and producer Apolline Traore. She's from Burkina Faso. And it's our pleasure to welcome you again to Good Morning Nigeria. I recall we had you a couple of years ago on the program, and also while you were a guest at the Zuma Film Festival. Welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, so let's begin the conversation straight away with you.
Okay.
What has brought you back to Nigeria for the Zuma Festival?
Well, it's to celebrate film for this festival. I think that the Zuma Film Festival is doing something great this year to try to merge Francophone filmmaking and Anglophone filmmaking. And that's why I'm here. I'm also a jury member for this festival. So I watch a lot of films, a lot of them. So that we're going to judge and then also give awards this Saturday. So that's what brought me to the Zuma Festival this year.
All right, so we also know what brought Mr. Terence Komalo to Nigeria with respect to this Zuma Film Festival. Komalo, why are you here?
We have a strong relationship with the Nigerian film industry, and as you know, we have just signed the audiovisual co-production treaty with Nigeria in December during the binational between Nigeria and South Africa. So this is an opportunity to promote that agreement and to, as the MD says, to consummate the relationship and ensure that we have activities coming out of the agreement and not just have agreement as a paper.
Okay, I'm sorry to jump in there, Terence. Thanks. Dr. Madueke, Managing Director of Film Corporation. We've had you from time to time on the Zuma Festival, usually when it's coming up. So what's new this year, and what's also the cause for having it earlier, if I would say, than usual?
Thank you. What's new is that government is...
All right, I'm sure that's part of the film festival. So we'll take that. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
I was just trying to, okay, that was a skit for the film festival. And the MD of the Film Corporation is then trying to wait for the next shot to come. And then he returns now to set, facing our camera. Roll.
So what's new is that government is working their talks and concern about job creation, about creating an opportunity whereby our youth will migrate away from situation whereby they are not employed into where they're employable. What's new is that for the very first time, Zuma Film Festival is being held with the collaboration of FCT, Federal Capital Territory Administration, whereby Abuja has been designated as the whole city, which means that, like it happens with other countries where you have film festival, there is greater interest, participation, and investment by government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that has resulted to what you see today, like cross-border, presence from South Africa, from Burkina Faso, from Kenya and Israel and other countries. That is with a view to grow the film festival in Abuja to global standard. You are aware that FESPACO in Burkina Faso is the most prestigious film festival in Africa, where our partner is coming from. So by the time we tap into what has been going on with the Francophone countries in their film festival and FESPACO, we will be in a position leveraging on partnership MOU signed with South Africa and the one coming up with Kenya to refocus Abuja as a continental platform for film festivals in Africa, which is more than overdue as to where we are supposed to be. So that is what excitedly is new, this ZUP 12th edition.
Why so early in the calendar?
Actually, it's not early, it's belated. Why I say belated, it's supposed to hold first week in December, but because of the collaboration I mentioned with Federal Capital Territory, it has to be shifted because the collaboration came late in the year. So we had to move it to this time. So we hope from next year we can get back into our calendar.
Okay, one would wonder why the theme for this year's festival, show the money, right? What is the philosophy behind this theme, and what is the target of the theme?
Yeah, like I mentioned in my opening statement, that government is trying to walk their talk to create jobs. So this is an agency of government in the creative sector, and most of the time people don't really understand that it is the low-hanging fruits that can create a lot of jobs for our teeming youth, and that the content is key. And so when this content is made, there is money, that can come from it. So we want to emphasize the fact that people can be well creators by investing more in the creative industry. That is why the theme. And part of the annual lecture will be as to what the benefit of turning Abuja into a filming location. Government has invested so much in infrastructure in Abuja. So by the time you have location incentives and rebates, people will start coming to Abuja as a film location, and then they will make the money, and the country will make the money, and the country will have their young ones employable.
Okay, we have two foreign nationals who are here with us, Apolline and Terence. So we don't want to localize this conversation, but you will permit me to also raise the next point with the managing director of the Film Corporation. Well, the vision, you say, is to turn Abuja into a film center for the continent and a good location. I'm wondering, how does that square with the whole idea of revitalizing the National Theatre Complex in Lagos and turning it into a creative hub? We had the Minister of Information here a couple of weeks ago, and they talked about the vast improvements and investments by the Bankers Committee, spending some $100 million to build new creative centers. The question is, how does this square with that plan, which is ongoing?
It is all in line. There's a handshake there. By the time the investment going on at the National Theatre is completed, it's going to be a super creative hub whereby people will be trained in skills as to how to manage the knowledge they have acquired. But you also understand that it's about the entire nation. We are not locating our capacity just in Lagos or anywhere, because the Nigerian Film Corporation is to develop and galvanize the film industry nationwide. government have equally spent so much in this beautiful capital here in Abuja. And like any other capital or any other city like Cape Town, we definitely have reached a location that can be tapped into. So those who have acquired those knowledge from the creative hub in coming up at the Lagos, at the National Theater, they can come to Abuja. They can have partnership with foreign producers and use Abuja as a location to shoot television series, feature film, documentaries, as the case may be. So it is all working together. They are not isolated. Like I said, government is working their talk to enable agencies of government to make the environment interesting for young people to find their skill.
Okay, Apolli, you've been here before, on Zuma Film Festival.
No, I was here, but it wasn't for Zuma.
It wasn't for Zuma?
No.
All right. Okay, because I was going to ask you what was your experience at that time and what you were expecting to take back home, this time around that you're here in Nigeria. But since you have been here before, I'm sure it's connected to filming or films and other aspects of video recording to respect to entertainment and what have you. Now that you're back here at this festival, what are your expectations in terms of relationship between Burkina Faso filmmakers and Nigerian filmmakers? And of course, do you intend to invest in a film festival in Nigeria?
I mean, first of all, what our Francophone filmmaking is trying to get from the experience of the Nigerian and also the Anglophone is even the way filmmaking are made in this country. We Francophone have another way of making film, which is really heavy, which has required a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time. So in that sense, we are not able to make film as fast as Nigeria. And then we always take the reference, and everybody has been telling us, look at how Nigerian is doing making film. Because, I mean, our filmmaking can take for one film 3 months, just for the production. And then for the editing, we are going for 5-6 months. And so you will spend a year making just one film. So the growth of capitalizing a film in our country and even in the Francophone area is very, very slow, and it requires a lot of money. You can spend 5 years looking for the money. But we are trying to merge with Nigerian filmmaking to actually know and then trying to get the tools to be a little bit quicker and then to actually make film that would probably less expensive because of course we have the heritage of France. So that's the way we know how to make film. So me being here, and every time I'm coming back here to Abuja or Nigeria, is really to see how we can cope. Like 3 weeks ago, I was in the film with a Nigerian filmmaker who actually we were co-directing this film because he was working on this film in Nigeria and in Ivory Coast and in Burkina. So by merging our talent together, he was able to see how we do work in the Francophone area and vice versa. So this is my main coming back again and working with the Zuma Film Festival is really to merge those two ways of making films.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, you were talking about the, broadly speaking, the divergences between Anglophone filmmaking, in particular Nigerian filmmaking and Francophone filmmaking. It's an issue that I will return to presently. But Terence Kumalo, Show the Money is the theme for the Zuma Film Festival this year. Is it necessarily the case that African filmmakers have not sufficiently explored the economics of this creative industry? Namely, sometimes you find these are low-budget films that get produced, and the big-time or big-ticket films that ordinarily would come on don't get the sponsors. Is it that Africans and African investors have not been able to, as it were, locate the key into this investment opportunity?
Definitely yes, because we have not realized the magnitude or the importance of IP especially within the sector. That's one. And the other thing is that private investors or private sector regards or views the industry as highly risky. As my colleague has said, that making a film takes a long time. For instance, a product can take up to 10 years for you to recoup your investment. So from that point of view, investors shy away, and then they view it as a risky, and then why invest in such a business where you can do something that will give you returns early. That's one. And two is that it's also correct that most filmmakers have not approached the craft or the art in a sense of a business making, but from an art point of view. So now it's that time where you have to now look at it as a business and not just a film for the sake of entertainment, but you also realize that you are in the business of entertainment and not just entertainment business. So the theme is actually very relevant, and then it also now shows that the shift in how we used to do things, and now we need to start moving to the next level to ensure that, as the MTA said, not only job creation, but only also becoming an economic driver.
Okay, now moving it to for the next level. So Nigeria is ranked high, in terms of capacity, and capability in film making. I guess he has also, adduced to that. Are you satisfied, with the quality of the kind of films that Nigerian producers churn out? And if the answer is yes, and they're looking forward to the Zuma Film Festival, do we have strategies already put in place, to attract investors? Because if I understand the theme, part of the target is to attract investors in the industry. What are those strategies put in place to ensure that investors will now, feel safe actually investing in the film industry?
Yeah, in terms of quality, there will always be room for improvement. But I will say that if Nigerian films are not that highly rated, then it won't be highly in demand. So, quality is relative. A certain ecosystem will adjudge certain quality as satisfactory, and then when you move to the next level of consideration, it probably may shortfall that standard, as the case may be. So I would say that for Nigerian films to be in market the way they are measuring up with quality, but definitely there's room for improvement so that they can win Oscars. Then in terms of what needs to be done in creating the interest, the traction, that's why I said the annual film lecture, which will coming up tomorrow, is going to focus on what are going to be things like incentives, rebates, location incentives, which can be which can be the hook, which can attract investors to say, okay, now they have tax rebate, now they have location incentives. Let us spend money in Nigeria or in Abuja, as the case may be. You are aware that here in Abuja there had been a film village in the pipeline for a long time. So part of this collaboration between FCTA and Nigerian Film Corporation, and like she said, our planned collaboration with people from other parts of the world, is to see how we can move the idea of the Abuja Film Village from being on the drawing board to where it's supposed to be. So all this could be a way of driving investment and incentive to Nigeria, to Abuja, as case may be.
All right, thank you very much. So back again to Apolline Traore. Earlier you were talking about the move mentally now towards a convergence of the Francophone way of filmmaking and then the Anglophone way of filmmaking. I was just wondering, bringing in the economics of it and then the art of it, what are those key differences that can be meshed or learned from one another and say, look, oh, well, the Francophone, they have easier access to capital, and this is the way they do it. The Anglophone, they have tougher access to capital, and these are the opportunities they could create.
For getting the capital, one of the things that we were able to do this year, there is an organization called OEF that only give money for Francophone filmmaking. But if you co-produce or if you co-direct with an Anglophone director, you can actually get that money. So that's what we did for the film that I worked with. So we merged by co-directing this film. It was actually his film, but they came to me and then I co-directed, and then we were able to get the Francophone money into that film. So this is one of the things that we were able to do for the first time actually this year. This is one thing. And then the other thing that we're trying to do also is to try to reduce, in our filmmaking, there's so many people on the set. Very, very a lot of people. And then
That's Francophone.
That's Francophone. There's very a lot. And we have a quota that you cannot go lower when you pay them. So that means that everybody has to be paid in a certain way. So of course the budget will go up. But if you have a little budget and then you can actually manage to make a film and produce a film in 2-3 weeks, that will help you make more film in a year with less money. And this is what we are not being able to do for now. But even if the Francophone are doing some of those films that are low budget film, it only stays in locally. It doesn't go up because the quality is not good, because of and so many things. So those are the things that we are trying to get from each other, from the Francophone and then from the Anglophone, to actually not only trying to get money from the places that one of us cannot go, and to reduce our expenses.
That's one thing I'd like to understand, from you professionals, and let me go to Terence Kumalo. When we talk about filmmaking, is there any difference between filmmaking and drama production? I would like to clarify this issue, because when you say film, if you watch films produced from the Western world, you tend to see some razzmatazz, some FPZ and what have you. Unlike what we package in Africa as films. I want to understand that difference, filmmaking, drama production, and what have you, because it does have a lot to say about the quality of what we have here and its acceptability, across the globe. So, Terence, I want to add this to that. What is the relationship between South African filmmakers and Nigerian filmmakers? And as my colleague raised the issue of the economics of it, how does filmmakers, or how do filmmakers in South Africa attract investors? Is it as difficult as it is down here in Nigeria? And from this Zuma festival that is going to take place, are you going to have a forum where both filmmakers from both countries are going to liaise and, of course, form a formidable force towards attracting investors in the industry?
This year is more of a fact-finding mission, but next year hopefully we'll have a delegation of South African filmmakers at a festival to interact with the Nigerian counterparts. However, coming back to the issue of the relationship, it's very strong, and it's been going on for years now. For instance, there's one production that was shot. It's an unofficial co-production between South Africa and Nigeria. It was shot in Lagos now in January, and the South African leg was last year. And there have been a number of other South African filmmakers working with their Nigerian counterparts, either co-producing or on a distribution level. Then in terms of funding, the South African government is actually the biggest funder of film in South Africa. It's about
why is that so?
Partly because to the statement I made earlier, that the private sector views the industry as too risky, and as a result, government has made financial instruments available in the form of grants and then recoupable investment through different agencies. One, it's ours, the National Film and Video Foundation, and there are other government departments and agencies as well, which play in that space. And the reason for that is to ensure that our government has realized the potential of film being a key economic driver to the contribution of GDP in the country.
All right, Terence, thank you very much. That's, Kieran, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah,
yes,
the
to talk about
funding.
government. Yeah, but one of the sources of funding you said is a foundation. That is to say, probably not the annual budget of the government. Is that correct, Terence?
Oh no, don't be the name foundation. It's actually the Film Commission. It's the organization, the agency I work for. It's called the National Film and Video Foundation. So we always have to explain that, no, we're not a non-governmental organization. We're actually a government agency. It's just the name.
Equivalent
it's the equivalent of NFC, actually.
All right,
Yes.
thank you very much. But still, that's an interesting perspective that you have raised. I mean, there are many avenues here that could be explored also for Nigerian filmmakers. Back again to Apolline Traore. One concern, and I don't know how this works out between Francophone and Anglophone. Storylines. I mean, some critics have been hard on some of the films that come out from Anglophone, with too much rituals and unedifying stories and so on and so forth. So, what is the perspective from the Francophone viewpoint in terms of storylines, and what does the market want? And how do you compare that, with Anglophone, and what might change or what might be learned from the other?
What is the audience wants? I think that the first thing that they're looking for is entertainment. That's one thing. The Francophone today are very, very big in Hollywood film, to tell you the truth. Very one. It's been like that for a couple of years now. And in terms of content, it really depends of how it's brought up. You know what I mean? There are certain what that you mentioned. It's the way that you're going to bring it, and it's the way that you are going to actually tell the stories, and that can be very interesting. We have another way of telling stories, and then we also had a lot of problems in certain times that where we've been criticized to call our filmmaking. How am I going to translate that in English? It's a film calebasse. Calebasse is that little. Yes. So all of the films that were made in the village, they were saying, okay, that's enough. Africa is not about only that.
Calabash,
and then
that's
exactly. Right. And we were fighting a lot with that by saying this stays in our culture. Every other countries or every other culture in the world have made their point and have made it through this industry by showing them culture. Our culture is not about guns. It's not about big exactly, but it is part of our lives today, but it's not our culture. And then African films are really struggling to actually be in that top of the industry of filmmaking. Because of that, I think, this is my perspective, and this is the way I feel about it. But unless we are going to actually show our culture and impose, that's the very big, impose our culture, we are not going to be able to be in that front line with other filmmaking.
But our culture, Kieran, isn't calabash, isn't all calabash. No. I mean, Dr. Madueke, I mean, it's our culture isn't all calabash. I mean, there are aspects of our culture. I'm sure you will require some social anthropology to get into this. I don't know how much of that intellectual content does come in. Our culture is way beyond. Our culture doesn't encourage laziness.
I think
our culture doesn't encourage, get rich quick schemes.
Yeah, I think I've been able to really work with some producers in the past. Filmmakers, drama producers, and what have you. And they tell you that, look, they get the storyline from what is existential in the society. Mm-hmm. That is not because the stories come from people who are also from that same cultural, yes. So that's what happens. And so when she talks about Calabash, it's about going to the village where we do films, not necessarily buildings that look like buildings in the cities and what have you. So, and if you watch some Indian films, really, they're highly cultural, about 100% cultural. That's what she's trying to raise. And that brings me to the issue of content development in Nigeria. Does it really affect sponsorship or investments in this area? Because some persons would like to say, look, I'll invest my money in a film that will cut across the globe in terms of marketing, because marketing could be limited to the kind of content that you are trying to push across. But after all said and done, filmmaking is about content.
Yeah, in answering this question, we will like to go back to how we evolve. That's Nollywood, and we took from what was unique, or what we considered unique, to our own content in terms of, though it could be a very small, subset of our culture, but we knew that there were those kind of, negative vibes in the society, get rich quick. It's not the way we live, most of us, but we know that there has been that kind of story. So those making those films felt that if they take it up, it could help them generate revenue quickly. And so they kind of focused in that area and used it to start. And it seems to have stuck now. We are trying to win them away from that because it's sending back a different narrative in the system. So that could help in their own way of raising money. And up until now, you couldn't say, well, that is why you may have an investor coming in to put money or not. But that was how they were able to raise money to sponsor their filmmaking culture. I mean, our own, filmmakers here, because there were no money coming from the equivalent of NFC, like the man from South Africa have just said. There was no money coming from the bank, or the bank rates were too high. So they needed to sell their land or borrow money from uncles and turn out films that can have rapid return on investment. And that's where we find ourselves, but we are moving away from there to make it.
For me to add about what the gentleman have said, those film calabash is necessary to keep our culture going. It's not about not doing it anymore, because that's what the criticism was, to stop doing that, and this doesn't represent our culture. I think that as a filmmaker, you need to have the choice to make what you want to do and how you want to represent your culture and how you want to tell your story, but not by putting barriers and saying, okay, now African filmmaker has to do this way. They have to talk about film in the buildings and the sky high. There's so many other stories to be told, but to say not to do this anymore because Africa has evolved, we still have the villages, we still have the calabash, we still have that culture. And I think that this also needs to be told and then to share it to the world.
No question about that. I mean, Apolline, I agree with you that that story needs to be told. We don't have enough time to proceed with this conversation further. But Terence, when you look at the African continent and the many stories that are yet to be told about ourselves, isn't it, again, looking at the economics of it, for us to try and satisfy our own market before we start saying we want to shoot to, if you say, the stars or being on the international scene? I want to see more of our stories, and there are existential matters that we can deal with, even minus the calabash. Or, as you say in South Africa, the Sangomas and Nangas.
Look, it's moving away from stereotypes because we don't want to be pigeonholed in a certain way. There's so many stories Africa can tell, and not be driven into a certain direction and only tell this type of stories. We can tell any type of story we want. We can tell a story about our village. We can adapt a book. We can tell a story about our children. There's so many to tell those stories. But within that context, still ensure that those stories make money either at the box office or they get sold in other markets.
All right. The bottom line is money making.
Well, yeah, money making, but money making. One point that Terence just made now, I would like Dr. Madueke to speak very briefly. We can tell our stories from a wide variety of sources, essentially books. But here we are, how many books are being written and published each year, and how many of such books are being adapted into stories, to say by way of film? I think that's an area you may wish to explore going forward. Quickly?
Yeah. Well, probably what is happening that we're just coming up with short scripts. You know, people come with storylines, not necessarily adapting from existing books. I wouldn't really know why it is so, but I think the issue here is money, trying to get started, and because of funding.
All right. I remember that the NTA also did a lot. You know, when we sponsored the Things Fall Apart.
Things Fall Apart. That's right.
You know,
that was an opus by Chinua Achebe.
About the last major books, that have been acted as a film. And on that note, gentlemen and lady, we call it a day on this edition of the program. First, let's thank our visitors, who have been here with us. Mr. Torrance Komalo, Monitoring and Evaluation Manager, National Film and Video Foundation, South Africa. We're glad you are here, and we hope you're going to enjoy yourself while you stay here in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. Also, we'd like to thank Apolline Traore, who is not here for the first time you've been around. So you were around. Yes. Thank you for returning to our Good Morning program. All right. And of course, the Managing Director and Chief Executive, Nigerian Film Corporation of Nigeria and Chairman, the Zuma Film Festival Central Planning Committee, Dr. Chidia Madueke. We salute you for being here this morning.
Thank you once again.
All right.
All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kiri. You have a great day.